Hi, this is Bob Samuels. Welcome to Candid with Bob and Melanie. And we have Henry Bruckstein from Campaign Stars here with us. We're in for a very nice discussion about ABM. Melanie, do you want to give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. My name is Melanie Candid, and I am founder and owner of Strategic Media. We're a small, relatively small media agency in the Bay Area. Well, we're really virtual across the globe. And we are everything media, B2B, demand gen, also awareness, and some B2C as well. And I look forward to this conversation and getting the ABM discussion going, which is a big part of also what we do.
Outstanding. Thank you. And Henry, tell us about what your company and what you do around ABM.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Bob. So I'm Henry. I'm the founder of Campaign Stars. We're really focused in on driving turnkey account-based marketing. So you could think of us as the Uber or the DoorDash, whatever your favorite end-to-end consumer example is of the space. We're solving that kind of holistic problem for brands, typically mid to large size. We were acquired in April by a company called The Marketing Practice. So we are now the world's second largest B2B provider in our space. So thanks again for having me, Bob.
Outstanding. Outstanding. So I'm curious, what are you seeing, or what have you done recently that's pretty cool or pretty effective as far as ABM goes? Maybe the targeting, the messaging. At the end of the day, what's creating the most success?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I'm going to give you a slightly longer-winded answer. I apologize, but we bucket ABM into two main ways that customers tend to go to market, either through a channel/partners team or using their direct sales teams, or a combination of both. And when we started the kind of moving into the ABM space about 6 years ago, it was really focused on direct. How do I get my sellers and my marketers working together, typically around new logo acquisition? We've seen that expand out. And that's great. We've seen folks now use ABM for accelerating deals in pipeline, selling more to existing customers, which I think is a fantastic space, almost requires ABM in my mindset. But we've also seen in the last 2 years an increasing awareness of using ABM to sell with your partners, so to go to market together, and give you lots and lots of examples there. But I'd say those are some of the kind of the major trends that we're seeing. I'd say the second major trend we're seeing is that ABM has ceased to be something that people are curious about, and something that people are at least now in the experimentation phase with, if not fully, kind of launching as a go-to-market technique.
Interesting. Okay. In my experience, everybody has a different meaning. Well, not everybody. A lot of people have a different meaning of ABM. Some folks look at it more from a targeting perspective, and some folks look at it more deeply, like, for instance, your company, where it's not just the media targeting and the marketing approach, but it's also the overall revenue and the engine for the company. So basically everything from the beginning to the end of the funnel on an account level basis. So I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are and your experience is about people's knowledge of what ABM is, both our clients and our agency partners and basically solution providers such as yourself.
We always have a slide that level sets. We have a slide, and it says, traditional demand generation, ABM, this is not a fight, right? It's an and decision. And the way we define ABM is kind of building upon the amazing work that your brand has already done, all of your website, your SEO, your SEM, and taking that and now going laser focused, going deep against a set of strategic accounts, either to help them buy more of your stuff, or sell into for the first time. And Melanie, we've ran over 1,000 programs and counting, and our framework is called the team framework. And in our opinion, ABM is not just targeting, or not just engaging through campaigns, and not just activating a really good playbook, or not just measuring the results. It's all of it. And if you tend to omit any one of those major areas, things just can't be as predictable. Success is, it might be a little nefarious, if that makes sense.
Right. I totally agree with you on that. We find our clients are very much, they're all over the place in terms of how much data they share when we look at optimizing campaigns. and how we can plug into the model, to their ABM model, whether it's top of funnel, mid funnel, bottom of funnel, and nurture. It's all important, to your point, to look at it basically on an ABM account-based level. So one of the shifts that I've seen is that back in the day, before ABM became sort of a big component of the marketing speak, if you will, we looked at optimizing campaigns based on individual conversions, based on what individuals are doing on a client's landing page. Now it's kind of shifted, and we have things like the nomenclature is changing from an MQL to an AQL. It's not a marketing qualified lead, it's an account qualified lead. And everything is more funneled up to that account in many instances. But we still also look at the individual conversions. But for the most part, that's the big trend I've seen, is that a lot of it's kind of rolled up to an account. I think companies that can do that are smart marketers if the model works for their organization.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, so through our acquisition, we now have a software product called Argus. And what it does, it kind of sits on top of your marketing automation stack, your CRM stack, and it takes it in and ingests all of that, typically MQL sort of stuff like form fills and downloads and trade show attendance and whatnot. But it tries to service it up as a marketing qualified account. So if we find that one person in a account has, I don't know, taken some action, that's interesting. If 5, 10, 15 people at an account are now consuming your content and engaging with you in some way, shape, or form, that's a really, really healthy signal that that is a very good account to put your energy towards, securing.
Right, exactly. And how do you advise your clients on account saturation? Like, is there a rule of thumb in terms of how much you recommend they spend time on marketing or promoting to a specific account before moving on to the next account? Is there like a level of saturation where you've already converted maybe, a certain percentage of the buying team? And I realize it depends on the size of the organization, but is there a rule of thumb there?
The ideal scenario is that the account never leaves the marketer and the salesperson side. So the ideal scenario is account starts to engage, they're listening to your message. There may be in pipeline now, let's continue ABM techniques, but at a much more one-to-one basis now to really help that sales rep close that account more quickly. Let's land the account, now let's expand them. So let's use the same set of techniques to surround that account, expand it up, make things as easy as possible for our champions in there to share the story, insight, help with referral selling and whatnot. So we would typically suggest that route. If you look at an unsuccessful outcome, then let's say we're targeting a group of 100 accounts and 20 of them just they're not doing anything, they're not engaging and whatnot. Let's put them into a classical nurture program. They might not be ready to hear from us just yet, and let's replenish those 20 with a set of new accounts that we can start to go after. We also do a lot of work with propensity modeling in the first place. So we're working with one of our clients right now. It's a large cyber company, and their challenge is, how do we go from a total addressable market of approximately 2,000 accounts, and that's much too large for an ABM program, right? How do we get that down to 100 to 150, something meaningful? So being able to again use internal data, external kind of intent data, and roll that together to form some form of logical propensity to buy modeling also helps with that.
I think that's great, because I think a lot of clients or a lot of marketers understand account segmentation and really fine-tuning your marketing campaigns or advertising campaigns towards different segments of their account list. And we try to advise them that not all accounts can be treated equally. There's, like you say, there's some that are further on along the funnel and some that need a little bit more, push at the top. So that's really great that you have those tools. I think I would like to learn more about them so I can consider those for some of my clients. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, let's do it. Let's have a briefing. That sounds great.
Absolutely.
Right after the call. Good. So, Henry, this is it's interesting. So, and it sounds like it's it's both marketing to net new and existing customers, and that's the part I always forget, because it's talking about ABM marketing. It's like it's just new stuff. It's like, no, it's growing the existing. That's probably much more important and much more effective and valuable.
It is, it is. So it's funny. I kind of wish that ABM didn't catch on as a moniker. It really is account-based revenue, account-based growth, right? And one of the major predictors of success is, do you have alignment with sales and marketing and operations? And if you're going to go after the channel, is the channel aligned as well? And is everybody kind of participating and on board? And if you can nail that, right, and if you can make that work, and we always recommend perhaps starting even like a little pilot and starting out with maybe 5 or 6 reps who are actively and enthusiastically willing to engage. That's kind of what you need. It'll catch fire. Now, one of our clients, I guess mutual clients, Melanie, is a company that used to be called FireEye. They're now called Trellix. There's an exceptional ABM leader who ran the program there. His name is Marlo, and he did such a brilliant job. He kind of did a small scale pilot. People loved it. And grew and grew and grew and grew. Started to have to have the concept of office hours to handle the demand of all the reps that wanted to have their accounts included. And the numbers speak for themselves, right? $100 million pipeline built in 2021 with just 2 full-time employees, and that pipeline converted 5 times faster than non-ABM pipeline with bigger deal sizes, right? And that's the promise of account-based marketing. But I think what we still see a lot of is people will start a campaign. That's the wrong word right off the bat. And if someone calls it a campaign, that's a problem. But say we're doing this ABM campaign, and it's going to be 4 months, and we're going to launch some digital ads, and we're going to have emails, and we're going to have these really fancy tools. And we forgot to talk to sales and get their agreement on accounts, or we're just going to get a BDR to make some phone calls in, right? But that's not ABM. That's kind of a traditional campaign. And what I really hope that the next generation, kind of that next iteration rather, is ABM is thought of like your inbound strategies. Like, imagine for a moment that we talked to a CMO of any kind of Fortune 5,000 company and said, your website underperforms, so we think you should shut down your website now, or shut down your SEO and SEM strategies. What do you say? They would laugh you out of the room, right? But if you go to the same CMO and say, gee, that ABM program doesn't seem to be working right now. It's not that silver bullet we thought, so we should shut down outbound conversations with strategic accounts. Oh yeah, that's cool. And that's what's literally happening. You have CMOs, we have CROs, you have CEOs who are saying, yeah, outbound sales, ABM, we just shut that one down. What? Like, that is how companies strategically sell. And if we strip away the fancy ABM, ABX, all that stuff, look, I think we're certainly on the podcast here, we're all old enough to remember the days before the, Marketos and the HubSpots of the world existed. You could hit a button to send 10,000 emails. In those days, you had to come up with a really good message, knowing your customers, right? Build a list of accounts, marketing and sales go out together. If you have a channel team, bring them along for the ride and go have at it. You had to be surgical. And I think that's kind of where we're coming back with a little bit of scale now.
Right. I love that. Yeah. And I also, I love it when you said, don't call it a campaign, because, I'm right there with you. It really does need to start at the end of the fun. It needs to start where the sales team is before it comes to the agency or the marketing director, whoever is running the programs in conjunction. It really needs to be a bottom-up approach, in my opinion, because we are often, as an agency, we're often approached with, we want to run a campaign. Oh, do you have an account list that you've already vetted with your sale, that is going to be either current customers that you're trying to, push over the edge, or you're prospecting new logos, whatever the marketing objectives are and the briefings. But a lot of times we don't hear it that way. We basically say, well, we don't have an account list, but we know who we want to go after. So that's when we look at things like lookalike, white space accounts, what are the firmographics? And I'm curious to know, Henry, what are your opinions? What is your opinion about that sort of more white space? This is a type of company. I don't have an account list. I'm starting from scratch, because we work with a lot of new, not necessarily startups, but clients that haven't done a lot in the ABM or in the digital marketing space.
No, for sure. Look, at the end of the day, you got to start somewhere, right? And if you don't have that kind of dream list of accounts for whatever reason it may be, that's totally fine. Unless you're a very large company with a large kind of budget and whatnot. Typically, being able to target a message, the more targeted that message is, typically the better the response may be. So, if you think about ABM, if you think about it as a matrix, we covered off one area of that matrix, which is around how do you make money on it? So new accounts, accelerate, through the pipeline or expand. But then you can tier your accounts as well. You could say, well, there's, for the masses, there's my traditional demand generation, which is great. I got a one to few programs that might maybe target clusters of 50 to 150 accounts. And then I got my much smaller kind of handful of accounts that I really want to penetrate, maybe less than 5, right? But for that middle tier, right, when we think about clustering, we use the word cluster purposely. And what we mean by that, maybe it's an industry cluster, maybe it's a solution message that you want to go after, geographic perhaps, depending upon where you are. But the more strategic you can get, the better. And we typically recommend, again, to us, it goes back to the number of salespeople you have. So meaningfully, an SDR can only manage about 20 accounts at a time, and a field rep typically anywhere from 5 to maybe 12. So if you use, let's say, a round number of 10, if you have, let's say, 6 sellers, maybe 60 accounts is where you start, and kind of give it a whirl for 3 to 4 months. Start at maybe an industry X, and if you see traction, that's great. Continue that program and move on to industry Y, and continue to drive success.
Right. Yeah, I think that's wise. And also, I'm curious to know, what types of analytics do you propose, or do you have within your software and your model that are really driving the account decisions outside of the company?
The account selection decisions, do you mean?
Yeah. So the company has their own intelligence, right, that you're
Right.
advising. But what additional layers are you adding in terms of, intent, firmographics, what have you?
Yes, and yes. So I mean, if we step all the way back, it all depends on how the level of sophistication that the buyer has kind of put into the process. Typically, we would suggest having the mentality of marketing selected and sales owned. And what I mean by that is marketing, which to answer your question, so let me start out there. Typically, it is somewhat of a marketing exercise. We can do the propensity modeling to say, look, as much data as the customer is willing to give us. Can you give us past purchase data? Can you give us opportunity data? Can you give us information from your marketing automation system? Let's see who's dug in, who hasn't, lookalike account data, etc. Layer that with, kind of leading edge intent data. So companies like ZoomInfo and Bombora and Ipsix and whatnot. Put that all into a big pot, shake it up, and you're going to come up with a prioritized list of accounts. So that's marketing led. We would then still want to go back to sales to say, hey, look, from a strategic perspective, we've done this exercise with marketing, and we think in your patch, salesperson X, these are the top 100 accounts. Let sales then own that to say, there's no way these 30 is ever going to buy from us because I've had conversations and they're not ready for whatever reason. These 20 are, love this list. Let me give you 5 more you haven't thought of. Right. Mm-hmm. That to me is how you're going to drive that alignment. And then the real secret, how do you keep that dynamic? Yeah. So if you've done that propensity modeling, cool, you've got that. That shouldn't change much. Your total TAM doesn't change that much, I don't think. But then the intent signals are very helpful to say, all right, now it looks like, another company has bubbled up for whatever reason it is. They're now a marketing qualified account. Do we add them to the mix? Well, go back to sales who covers it to say, hey, it looks like this account's now bubbled up. You want to have how to go at it? Yes, great. Toss them into the program. Mm-hmm. So I think if we think of this as not a point in time exercise, but an ongoing one, everything we talked about, the propensity modeling itself, let's get the base. Let's build the program so it's dynamic and redo those propensity exercises every 6 to 12 months.
Yep. Oh, so that's the cadence. Yeah, no, that sounds right. Okay. That's great. That's great. So you're working directly then with a client, a customer's sales organizations, as well as the marketing departments, or? In the
best case scenarios, we are. The majority of the time, marketing is the one funding the initiative. We, as a matter of fact, one of the success criteria, and we meet with our customers on a monthly basis to do executive business reviews. And we bring out a little document and it basically says, look, what are the chances of this thing? What are the pitfalls that we need to avoid? One of them is, have we had a chance to directly meet with the salespeople involved in them, train them, right? If the answer is yes, we're happy. If it's not, then we were only able to work through a marketing organization or sales enablement channel. That's an iffy scenario, right? I mean, 6 degrees of telephone tag is hard enough, let alone in something as complex as this. So the ideal scenario, Melanie, yes, we'll be working with both sides of the organization. I'd say that's about half the time. Half the time we're working exclusively with marketing.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and you mentioned measurement of success. So what exactly at the end of the campaign, how do your clients measure whether the campaign was successful or not?
Yeah, so three major ways we focus on that, Bob. So engagement. Has that account engaged with content, microsites? How many people within that account has engaged? So getting them to engage and listen to your message, kind of step one. How they converted to what we call a seller conversation, some type of dialogue with this account, has something initiated. Have they done more than just consume your content? Are they now willing to talk to you? And then of course, pipeline and ultimately close one business.
Right. Got it. And how do you handle very short sales cycles?
Well, so it's interesting. We would love very short sales cycles. That's awesome. I'd
Those are
say
great,
the
right?
majority of our clients have anywhere from 9 to 24 month sales cycles. If you're talking about something that's like a month or 2 months, yeah, I guess we do have some, like Zoom Info is a client of ours, and I guess they do close business fairly repeatably. But then I guess the question is, where does an outbound strategy make sense to go get them? A lot of those fast closes tend to be smaller accounts that a very bespoke ABM program might not make a ton of sense for. But in the example of Zoom Info, we do a lot of work with them around renewals. So how do we help them secure strategic renewals, right? And then cross-sell and upsell. So you might have closed that fast business. That's great. So you've got your core product in, but then most companies have more than one product or service to then sell. So look at, what do we do now, right? How do we expand it? So how do we then take that ABM approach, surround the account, expand the buying committee, and start to get either new divisions using that product or net new products sold?
Yeah. Okay. And the only reason I asked that question is I would think you'd have to pivot your strategy more quickly on a shorter sales cycle, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't mean pivot it necessarily as in the strategy, but maybe the optimization of the programs, because you're getting data more rapidly, like more frequently.
Yeah, I guess we don't have a lot of, I'll be honest with you, but anything sub 3 months to close, we don't have a lot of clients that fall in that bucket. So I'm not sure if we have enough data to, answer that with any grain of truth.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I'm kind of looking at like the subscription model clients, or like, free trial, things like that, where it's,
okay. So we were looking, okay. So if you're looking at something like a free trial, so when we say seller conversation, bucketing into that would be, all right, the account's engaging. Are they willing to take that next step with you, which you could define as an organization and say, yeah, I want them to call a seller, or I want them to sign up for a subscription or a free trial. That would be the metric that we'd look at. And assuming then we'd have to focus on how do we convert you from that free trial to a paying customer.
Right, exactly. So there's kind of like a dual conversion metric. It's not just the sign up, but once they sign up, you want them to continue using the product or using.
Because you need some of those short-term milestones. When you've got, at the end of the day, it has to be sales, but you can't wait 15 months to find out whether it worked or not.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's good to have, at least be able to measure that short-term progress, I would think.
Yeah. And that's, again, where it goes back to the key metrics of, is that account engaging? Is the engagement level increasing across the account? Are they talking to you, or whatever it is, signing up for a demo, whatever the call to action is? Are they moving into pipeline? Are they progressing through that pipeline? And ultimately, are they closing? So there's multiple touch points along there, Bob. But without confusing the rest of the listening audience, we always break it down to engagement, conversion to the next step, whether it's a demo or a conversation with the rep, and then pipeline.
Yeah.
Right.
And then do you get into attribution, as far as specific outreaches?
See, isn't that fun? So when we think about an ABM program, in theory, all attribution should be targeted towards that account. Yeah. And if you're doing it right, this should be multi-channel. So I'll give you another statistic. Okay. If you reach out to a buyer in just one channel, let's say email or gifting or LinkedIn, less than a 6% chance that buyer is going to engage. 3 or more channels, let's say you do LinkedIn, phone calling, and email, that goes up to about 20%. If you orchestrate, 9% rather, if you orchestrate the campaigns, you have a playbook so that everything is sequenced and that buyer is touched about 20 times in the course of about 2 to 3 months, that goes up to 20%. So when you think about the attribution, typically attribution is a challenge if you have multiple channels hitting that account. But if we're hitting that account as part of an integrated program of which you're using multi-channel anyways, attribution ceases to be all that important. Now, what might be interesting is to know what channels of engagement that each of the buyers in that organization chose to move forward with. So you can increase your investment, say in digital versus live events versus whatever. But yeah, attribution is typically a bit more grainy when it's, I got a marketing team, I got a sales team. Marketing team is handed off a lead to sales, right? Maybe from content syndication or a trade show and whatnot. Yes, I could see marketing saying, so how do you attribute that win back to us? Well, there was usually at least, I don't know, what did the number say? 10 to 15 different things that a buyer interacts with along the buying journey. So yes, attribution is very important. We'd just say, does it really matter? There were 10 to 12 things that you did that were associated with getting that account to engage. Most importantly, get that account to engage, and then go back. And if you want to do attribution, think of attribution more of, is that channel performing well? Do I want to double down on it?
Right. And I think a lot of the attribution models that I've seen are now looking more at the account level in terms of the attribution metrics, which is great, but then still some are still looking at the individual attribution. So I think it makes a lot
That's
of
true.
sense.
That's true. And like I say, it's not a fight as to ABM is everything and you must change all your systems metrics accordingly. You're going to have your broader scale marketing oriented programs that you're generating awareness, and you're doing all the right things. You are syndicating content. You're getting those white papers out there. You're getting the name of the brand out there. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. In conjunction with that, in my humble opinion, you kind of have to have that outbound engine going as well, right? And it's going to be a more discrete exercise. It's going to be more laser focused. But if you use the hunting and if you use, kind of fishing as an example, you're going to throw the net over the ocean and you might catch that dream marlin. You really might. It might swim through that net and off you go. Or you could specifically go spearfishing and just go get those marlins, right? There's nothing wrong with either approach. You kind of need to do both to have a sustainable business.
Right. And I think it depends on the budget, the resources
Yep.
that the client has. But yeah, it's great if you can have a full funnel approach. I agree with that.
So we're at the 30-minute mark, which is really cool. Having a good conversation. So I have one last question, unless Melanie, you have any. But Henry, what do you? Where's all this heading? You've seen a lot of changes in the last several years, both of you. Where do you see ABM in 3-5 years from now?
Yeah. Well, like I say, I think a lot of the vernacular is going to change. I think, your foresters and your gardeners are going to dream up a different word for ABM. That's going to be it more holistically, including folks beyond the marketing acronym of that, so sales and partnerships and whatnot. I think that there will be a kind of recognition that ABM is just another way of expressing outbound selling, right? The ability to practically go out there, whether to land or expand. And I'm really hoping in the next, say, call it 5 to 10 years, that is viewed as an always on activity, just like your website, just like SEO, SEM. So as my wish, I hope we're going there. We'll see. We're trending in the right direction. My further analysis, if we end up having a bumpy 2023, as we might from an economic perspective, I think the choppier the waters, the more precise you have to be as an organization. You're not going to be able to just blanket the ocean and throw that big old net on it. So I think being more focused and a bit more focused on kind of going after the exact fish you want to focus on is going to be more important than ever.
Yep. And I think analytics and performance, just success metrics is going to be very key to proving out budgets, and marketers are going to ask for it more and more.
How's the privacy and compliance, GDPR? So I mean, how is that all going to play in the loss of cookies, which still isn't quite there yet, but all of that changing. I don't know how that's going to be in 3 to 5 years.
Well, it's a great question. And I think it's going to get harder and harder to, in a blanket swoop, try to get down to the individual level. And we could argue, is that good or bad? But I think we think about ABM. That's why it's so important then to have that multi-channel outreach. You got to have somebody trying to reach you on the phone, making a direct LinkedIn connect, and you got to have those ads best you can, trying to get out there and hit folks. And precision will matter. And I think you're right, Bob. It's going to get harder and harder and harder to just buy your way into that, isn't it? So I think, again, that's another reason why ABM techniques I think are going to be more valuable than ever.
Right.
That's great discussion. Melanie, any other final questions?
I mean, the only thing Yeah, the only thing I would add is, and I'm curious to know your perspective on this. I know we don't have much time now, but in terms of the whole personalization tactic in terms of driving more, targeted, since we are seeing more limited resources from some companies, driving more personalized ad experiences, using companies that can personalize the website experience or personalize the ad delivery experience. And we've been doing it for a long time now, but do you think that's going to become more and more important?
I think it's going to be table stakes, to be honest with you, Melanie. 75% of all buyers in B2B won't even respond to something if there's not some degree of personalization. So everything you just mentioned, whether it's personalization of ads, microsites, etc., content even, I think becomes just kind of what you have to do there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. That's everything I have. So
Great.
interesting. I hate to end.
We'll have more conversations. Thank you both. This has been fun. I think it's worth, I think we'll be back for more conversations. We may have a part 2 of this. Stay tuned. Anyway, to Henry, it's really great. You've got a great take on ABM. It's refreshing, and it's a pleasure to speak with both of you.
Thank you so much. It was a fun conversation. Thanks, Melanie.
Thank you. Talk to you at some point in the future.
Bye, Bob.
Bye,
Sure.
Bob.